Taliban put us in live shooting. Three of my tribesmen, they shot them right before my eyes. The inspiration that I got from my father and my grandmother were really the foundation to start my career.
Kia ora whānau. We have a special guest today in our studio, and we'll be introducing him very shortly. And very exciting to hear more about his story and the journey, and also he's author of the book. We will find out together more. Stay with us. Welcome back, and today is very special. I have a good friend and as a guest with me today in the studio, Abdul. How are you, Abdul?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It's such a great pleasure to be here, and it's good to connect and be in this program with you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Abdul, I know you and for the time when you arrived to New Zealand, and I've been seeing your activities and things you do. You're doing great stuff. So before we go deep into our conversations, would you be introducing yourself to the audience and people who are watching us?
Of course, yes. Yeah, thank you. My name is Abdul Samad. My nickname is Abdul, and I was born to high mountains and wide landscapes of Afghanistan. And I arrived in Aotearoa, New Zealand, February 2023.
So it's been 1 year for you in New Zealand.
It has been 1 year. I'm 1 year old now.
How you feel?
It feels great. And the most important part of this journey is the freedom that I have got. And it was a difficult time being locked, living in uncertainty for a long period of time. The most beautiful thing is the freedom that I have, and I can feel that with my whole being.
I think the country is also lucky to have you. Welcome. And I want to tell you about the journey. How was the journey for you, Abdul, when of refugee? If you want to share a little bit about us.
Oh, yes, of course. I became a refugee when I was 10 or 11 years old. During the 1990s, when the Taliban started the Hazara massacre in our village, Dahmardah Village, Afghanistan, Ghazni province. And then the killing of the Hazara, targeting the Hazara people, became so escalated and with the passage of time. And then we were forced to flee. And then we sought asylum in Pakistan. So my journey of refugee started from there. And then I have been wandering across borders since then, at a very early age. And I became a child laborer at the construction site in Iran during the 1990s, and I had a very rough time in Iran, both from the work and also from the Iranian community in Iran. And then I had a very bad experience when I was deported. I was deported constantly from Iran. 2 times I was deported from Iran. And then in Afghanistan, that was the epic time of the Taliban, and the Taliban put us in live shooting with 3 of my tribesmen, and they shot them right before my eyes. And I don't want to make it very much sad, but yes, and I survived. Then I ended up in Pakistan. Went back to Afghanistan again to rebuild my life, to contribute to the reconstruction of Afghanistan after the fall of the Taliban during 2000. And I started my career as a journalist there. Did a lot of work for years until I was stopped and then forced to leave again.
Wow.
Ended up in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And so I spent quite a long time in Indonesia, almost 10 years in Indonesia with no rights, with nothing. And yeah, it was a difficult journey.
I'm just listening to you and
Mm-hmm.
imagining the situation. It's very
Mm-hmm.
hard. While I'm a person as well, I share the same journey of refugee, but
Mm-hmm.
we have a different
Mm-hmm.
experience. So for you, what made you to do the journalism work? What made you to be a writer, write about those stories?
I was a passionate reader and also writer, I could say, in a very early age, because the inspiration that I got from my father and my grandmother was really the foundation to start my career uh, in writing. I was not writing for anything, and I was not writing for anyone, but I was writing for fun, and I was writing to journal my own journeys that I had, a bit of them. And when I went to Afghanistan, I was really very much passionate about reconstructing, rebuilding the country, because we lost everything, the infrastructure, the lands and people, separation from family members for
Mm,
years. And I was good at telling these stories that I experienced myself, and also doing stories on others who uh, survived the Taliban regime during the 1990s, and also uh, about that former government during the Karzai government
mm,
time. And I did stories about government and corruptions because I was so passionate, and that's how I started my journalism.
mm. Wow, that's interesting. And Abdul, have you finished any university course?
I started, and I couldn't complete, and I was forced to leave in between.
Mm,
And then with that, I left the country. So I couldn't, unfortunately, complete
yeah, but
my university.
and I think, well, you don't need university. You have, which is an unfortunate situation, but the life experience have made you to be a good writer and passionate about stories of people, and which is more impactful when you transfer the stories of voiceless people into the other world by the tools we have, which you use the tools of writing. And so I want to, you told me about you have a passions about that and stuff. Then what made you to be continue to be a writer and then a poetry, I think.
Uh, I will take you back to all time in Afghanistan. My grandmother and I told that this story, and I shared that with other
Mm,
friends too. And my grandmother during the winter season, and my father and a couple of community members used to come together during the winter when there was so much snow, maybe a 1 meter snow. And we would sit together, and there was a table in between, and we would put the table in between, and a big, huge blanket on top of that, with a coal under the table, and everybody would sit around that table. And so we would recite poems, and my
mm,
grandmother was the most amazing storyteller I have ever come across. And she would sit and tell the stories for hours, and you wouldn't get bored. And some of the stories she would talk about uh, the, the, the walking castle, and I am writing some of the stories that I remember, and a couple of other stories very famous. And she would tell the stories, and those became a part of me. And then my father, in the morning, I would always wake up to that recitation of Quran loud in the morning, with that soothing and peaceful voice of Quran, and. And then my father was a book lover, and he had collections of books, and read those books. I used to read those books, and when I started my career as a journalist in Afghanistan, and then I couldn't continue that, and I was forced to leave. And then I became once I ended up in Indonesia, and then I couldn't practice my journalism in Indonesia. Life is just life stops moving because there is no right to anything. As a refugee, you don't have the right to anything at all. You don't have the right to get married. You don't have the right to get to education. You don't have the right to employment opportunities. You don't have the right to even register a handphone SIM card, and you don't have the right to drive, and you don't have the right to work. So many things, so many limitations. And I was so much, because I have just started my journalism and I wanted to continue that. And in Indonesia, I couldn't find any other way. Though I have been constantly involved with the JFCC Jakarta Foreign Correspondents Club, with my journalist colleagues and friends, but I couldn't do that openly, and I couldn't use the titles and everything for myself. And then I diverted to poetry, and this book is the continuation of my journalism, and my journalism hasn't stopped. So this book is the continuation of journalism, and that is how I navigated in Indonesia once I found that I was not allowed to practice journalism anymore.
Okay, it's awesome to hear. I mean, to hear that how you evolved the passion from family, from a grandmother, being a good, like a hero, if I put it that way, or a storyteller, and then you grow your passion and to be as well a journalist and a writer that's much needed for a country to transfer those stories into the other world. So, Abdul, what is you mentioned about the book? Can you show us the book's title for the audience and the people watching us, and tell us a little bit what is this book about?
Yeah. This is called The Unsent Condolences. This is the fruition of resistance against injustice, resistance against the Hazara genocide, resistance against discrimination, resistance against racism, resistance against the conduct of annihilation.
Sorry, brother. Just for those people who don't know about who's Hazara, can you give us brief introductions about who's Hazara?
Hazaras are the indigenous people of Afghanistan, and one tribe in Afghanistan. With the passage of time, the massacre or the genocide against the Hazara people started, and they lowered us down in numbers, but not in our voices. They have murdered more than 62% of the entire Hazara population. With that given, maybe more than 4.2 or 4.5 million of the Hazara population have been wiped out from Afghanistan. And the statue of Buddha in Bamiyan is the symbol of the Hazaragi legacy, and so much more to tell about the Hazara people.
Great, awesome. That was good to know, explain in brief, but I hope that people watching us do research more, understand more the history of Afghanistan and history of Hazara community. So in that book, why you name it this title?
The Unsent Condolences is just an attribution to thousands and millions of lives have been erased in Afghanistan, and people who have been killed in Afghanistan, those whom I haven't seen, and those whom I haven't had the chance to sit with, and but I share the bloodline with those people, and for most of them I couldn't even attend any funeral, and I couldn't get the chance even to grieve properly, to mourn properly. So this title comes this comes out of an attribution to thousands and millions of Hazaras who have been murdered and wiped out in Afghanistan and in Pakistan through the sectarian violence.
That's a beautiful work you're doing to amplify those voices.
Thank you.
So thank you for writing. Is this your first book, Abdul, or? one of
This
many.
this is my second book.
Second book.
I published my first book called The Red Ribbon. The Red Ribbon was published in 2019 in Indonesia, and after that, this is my second book.
Oh, okay, great. Congratulations
Thank
on
you,
that.
thank you.
And it's great news to have this. So I want to ask you a little bit more now into the life here in New Zealand. So you talked about going, you talked a little bit about the freedom, but if you want to share us, it's up to you. What you do in your daily life? What do you have a career or in New Zealand?
I would like to just give a little bit of how I describe New Zealand.
Yeah.
When I first arrived, when I first landed at the airport, and I could inhale the fresh fragrance of the sea, and that was so reviving. And the weather was so clean and peaceful. When with my friend Chris G, we climbed the Mount Cook, I think, and we went on the top of the hill and we were looking around, and it was so beautiful, the landscapes and the hillsides and the mountains, should I call them hillsides? They were so beautiful, and you would think that God has just left a few minutes ago and formed so carefully, with so much passion, with so much care and so much love and so much respect. He formed everything so beautifully and left 5 minutes earlier. That's how I found the beauty of the landscape and the beauty in the scene, the beauty in the valleys. That is my expression about these lands. And for most importantly was the freedom that I sought. And I felt as if, a very heavy ton of metal or cement left from my shoulder. I felt absolutely light, and it was a great feeling. Apart from that, I had the privilege to work with arms of terror refugee and migrant support services for a while, and after that I joined Victoria University of Wellington, and I am working with them at the moment, and this is what I do for now.
Beautiful. You're doing great, my friend. That's amazing. I forgot to ask you when we were talking about the book. Can you read us a little bit?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I would like to recite a poem, and this is called Garden of Grace. Garden of Grace. This poem is talking about my resistance, describing my resistance against colonization and confiscation of the Hazara lands, Hazara culture, Hazara language, Hazara practices in Afghanistan. And this is in resistance against all the colonization and genocides attempted or conducted against the Hazara people. And it's called Garden of Grace. I am not uprooted nor silenced. I exist fully, relate to all time and space. I am prepared, rising again in the bosom of a fruitful summer, tucked away in between every spring and fall. I can't deny how lovely rising feels in the adversity of discovering, for I mastered, touched them all in the tranquility of poems. I shouldered all morning griefs, cried with afternoon sunsets, have known the late evening aftermath, heard voices with a dying fall, cried with eyes that shed blood. I never lose myself because Baba's words abide in me forever. I grew up seeing visions that fixed me in shade phrases. When death stays, I hold the light of Baba's vision, recite songs of Ammi's springing words, embrace Mother Kalan's soulful wisdom. I re-embrace the core of life, As the soothing visions touch the strings of my heart, I get enlivened to the embraces, reaching lovingly towards me, though millions of miles stand between us. I dance to the cadence of my ancestors' breath, composing rhymes out of the heartbeats. Calling the names is a healing, a prayer, and a submission for worship. This poem I wrote this poem when I was still in incarceration in Indonesia, with that kind of feeling of loneliness and feeling of being absolutely colonized in all senses, colonized from movement, colonized and being absolutely restricted from everything, and you're not allowed to make any decision about your life, about family members, about nothing. So it was during those dark moments when the feeling of darkness was absolutely overwhelming, and I healed myself and kept myself alive, writing these poems and expressing my pain and grief through poetry and rhymes.
Wow. That's what I can say to you. Just how great you giving the message and express to yourself every feelings in using a poem. And right now you put it in a book that can help others who could feel in the same situations or who could relate into those kind of conversations. So I know, do you have a lunch book? When would you tell us a little bit more about it? When is it? Where is it?
Well, yes, we're going to have a book launch about launching the Unsent Condolences on 20th of March. Maybe a couple of days ahead of us in the future. And it's going to be organized in Unity Books at Well Street. And the event is hosted by Behrouz Buchani. And I'll be there, and a couple of other great authors will be there to recite some poems. And we're going to have a good time and talk a little bit more about the unsent condolences. And also the book is going to be available. I think the book is available now in Unity Books. And I really encourage everyone to just go and grab one copy and see and read for themselves. And if this resonates with them, maybe they can recommend to their friends to know more about refugees and the struggles that we go through and the journeys that we leave behind.
That's awesome. And I want to thank you for this opportunity that we have these conversations about the book before the launch happening. It's really a privilege for us to have you. And I want to encourage the audience, people who are listening, watching this as well, that on 20th March, Unity Books, what time is it?
It is at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock,
6
be there. Abdul will be there. If you need a signed copy, that's the opportunity. You get a signed copy of the book there, and will be, I think there will be a panel or a little bit talking more about the book details there.
Yes, we are going to discuss a little bit more about, but it's going to be officially, that's a launching of the book officially.
Yeah.
And formally we're going to launch the book in New Zealand, Theora, New Zealand, and then we're going to have a kind of more series of panel discussions, and we're going to talk in detail about the book and the journey within this book and my journey.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm very looking forward to invite you for different conversations in the future as well, to have a more corridor with you.
Absolutely.
But before its time is coming to an end, I want to check with you and ask you the question we always ask the guest. What's your message?
I would like to just remind everybody, anyone who shared similar journeys of me, that any label or those labels or numbers and codes would not define us. And we are strong people. We miled millions of miles and climbed mountains and valleys. Very strong people, people with refugee backgrounds or former refugees. They are very strong people, and and great contributors to the development of this country and all societies. And former refugees have a lot to offer to the development of societies and communities, and all we want is to be heard in person rather than hearing about us. I think the best way is to interact and get involved in conversations and providing opportunities equally for people, particularly with refugee backgrounds. And I'm not ashamed of my past journeys, and I'm strong, and I'm prepared, and I'm ready to offer as much as I can to this beautiful land of love that I call.
Beautiful message, Abdul. Thank you. But you made me in your conversation think when you talked about I'm not shameful about identity. Do you call it identity, the refugee backgrounds? There's a lot of arguments talking about some people calling themselves refugee background, former refugees. What's your opinion about this?
I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I don't call that. I don't know how to call that, but I always use that as a label in my book. When I describe that, and I describe that status as a label, and because we were often defined with quotes and numbers, and so those quotes and numbers made me feel a little bit lower than a human. But what I understand out of all the experiences that I had, that we are beyond the numbers, we are more than numbers, and we are more than labels. Whether people call that an identity, whether people call that a label, and but we are human beings after all, and we are strong human beings, and we mean more than numbers and labels.
And that label not being given to us.
Well, I have experienced that in Indonesia. I was only given a number and code, and that was all I had. And anything with anything, refugee was attached to that, and without that status, we were not even recognized. So that made me rethink about the definition of that. The definition of refugee and the definition of those labels and that particular status.
I see that perspective, Abdul, and about the definition and why it's come that. But just the last things for you about talking about former refugees label. Is it good to be given or to be told us in a refugee background or a former refugees, or doesn't really make any difference as long as there's a refugee there, and how that impacts your current?
Well, I think there is nothing wrong with calling a former refugee, and I think that is my personal opinion about that, and I don't mind it if someone calls me a former refugee or Abdul Samad a former refugee. I don't mind that at all, because that is the reality of one of the realities of my journey, and I have been absolutely put into a very terrible situation to go and earn at least that status, refugee. And refugee is defined by the 1951 Convention, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I don't think that is a bad thing. And we have most of us, we go through a very difficult time to at least earn that status. So I don't mind that.
There is this, the reason I'm asking that question, there's still specifically a lot of talk about this. There's through my experience working with students and others, etc., and being one of them, the narrative behind the word refugee. We struggled here to find meaningful employment, meaningful, etc., just because when you heard the word refugee backgrounds, there's a lot of unknown stories, unknown about the background of those peoples. So we go into a category that they are trauma people, they are hopeless people, they just come from a camp, they did not have educations. While right now I'm having a conversation with a writer. Right now, you know around yourself how much the skills you are working with, I'm working with. So this is the story we want to try to bring back, while we not be shameful about the background. So I agree with you that there's nothing shameful about being a former refugee. But what we need to try, or actually not us, the other people in the society need to understand more beyond that. When you hear about refugee, when you hear about migrant, just understand the story, understand the background, why the people have end up to be in this country.
Well, that is absolutely true, and the problem is the narrative has been completely controlled, and the stories have been always told. People have always have heard about refugees, but not from refugees themselves. And I'm sure those who have experienced and worked walked a bit of journey with people with former refugees. I'm sure they have a different understanding and a different perspective about the former refugees. And at the same time, and if we put anyone who is having a different understanding about former refugees, and trust me, if we put them to live a week of our life, they won't be able to make it. They won't be able to survive that. So imagine people walk almost three portions of their life, wandering across the borders, and they start. I personally started from zero. This is the fifth time I'm starting from scratch, and that requires a lot of energy, and that requires a lot of patience, and that requires a lot of hope. But we are absolutely strong people and courageous people. We have a lot of courage, and so that stamina that lies within the former refugees. And I don't think that others would be able to carry that for a long period of time.
Absolutely, and that's beautiful to sum up these conversations. And I think those stories could be lessons, could be learned about resilience, about different conversations, different situations that help people. We don't wish the other people to be on this journey.
Absolutely not.
That's why the purpose of sharing, telling stories is tell other people like how, when, for instance, if sometimes you don't be grateful for small things, while there's other people really in hard situations where they think about that give them the hope, give them the courage. Because in this society in New Zealand, we face a lot of problems that affecting the mental health, affecting the well-being of people. But I think the refugee background people can play a crucial role by at least sharing the stories.
Absolutely, yeah.
That will really create a lot of hope and create a lot of learning lessons from a lot of people who may be different journeys, situation inside the country that are maybe thinking different pathways, but need to hear a different story. But that said, Abdul, coming to the end of the time, but I want to end it with you. Want you to give you the mic for choosing the final words, and we want us to read something from the book and finish this episode.
Absolutely. And we had a long conversation about refugees and about that status. And one of the last poems in this book is called I Am But More Than a Refugee. And I'm going to recite maybe 3 stanzas from this poem because it's a long poem. Mm-hmm. It goes, I am but a poet, harvesting in the garden of ghazals, a guide to the toast of vapor of noises unheard. The blooming sea of awakening dreams, the ultimate sense of life and joy residing against the tongues of youth. I am but the certifying seed, well sown, dancing to the trumpet of truth, the interpreter of that vast side where man has never attempted to tread. I am but a divine and high-ranking orchard place where spring forever resides, wild roses never wilt and grass never turns pale. The stone walls and tall towers shall not imprison my mind, nor will this physical confinement or exile. I roar against their incarcerating walls, and each echo is a rhythm in itself. Every thought cultivates fine jewels of wisdom. Verses of Jalaluddin Muhammad Rumi Balkhi ran wild in me. I am but the humble servant of humans, never kowtowing to those greedy demons who hold children of God behind iron bars to enhance investment with hidden courts. I am but the newborn essence of Khoshal Khatak, a poet who sweated blood until poetry became his name. The extended verses of Mir Ali Sher pipen from an orchard on a farm in Kent. I am but a jingle of keys to the bare welded locks, words with tough skin, the hidden beauty forming Ahmad Shah's vision. I forget the throne of Delhi when I remember the mountain tops of my Afghan land. Thank you.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. And by that, we end the show here. Thank you. And Abdul, so we now the episode we finish it, but in season 5 we do have traditions. We are asking our guests to write us something from their experience on the show here. Could be a message, and then also we ask you to write us a question for the next guest. And you may don't know who is the next guest. Yeah. So
Sure.
will you be
Yes.
ready?
Yeah.
But before that, I want to just ask with my colleague, what's the question for the other guest? Do you have that one ready?
Who's your real life superhero and supervillain?
Yes. Who's your real life superhero?
And supervillain.
Yeah. So for that one, I want to ask you, who's your real life superhero and super
Villain.
villain?
I would dedicate that entitlement to my parents because they have been absolutely that core of existence, and they were the reasons I walked all those journeys and kept dreaming and kept fighting and kept surviving, and they are my
Superhero.
superheroes.
Awesome.